this is a lot of, I mean, you'll have to have some faith in it. There's a lot of evidence, there is a lot of emphasis put on this, that this was real, right? This Bhagwad Gita was about a 2 hour and 15-minute long conversation, somewhere between 2.5 hours, depending on the speed of how this Krishna and Arjun, mostly. It was that conversation that happened. The time is roughly starting at 7:45, so about 7:45 in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, at a place called Kurukshetra, which is in the northwestern part of India. And this is on the brink of a war. In the morning before the war was supposed to begin at 8 o'clock on that day. It was a world war of sorts for them, at least it was. It was definitely a civil war, a national scale war at that time. And that's when the conversation began. It has some fantastic elements to it, like television, like someone seeing it from a distance and narrating that. It also has a very, very tangible quality to it. It's like some very perceptive, very direct questions asked, and a lot of pushback. Nothing is taken for granted in this scripture. Arjun, the receiver, is not automatically accepting it, whatever is being told to him. He's questioning it, he's asking, he's even, at times he says, are you confused? You're confusing me. All that. So it's at a peer level is what I'm trying to say. It's like a peer-to-peer type of conversation. This is not a guru-disciple, although you'll see that Arjun in the first chapter itself accepts Krishna momentarily for that time period, and that you're my guru, he says. That you're my guide. It's more in that sense, like guide me, Krishna. But very quickly then it gets back in the mode of, oh, we're friends, aren't we? We've hung out together, haven't we? We've sat together, we've eaten together, we've joked together, all that. And so he exercises that right. Arjun, the receiver, exercises his sort of compatibility, his peer level with the giver, the Lord himself. And that's really beautiful, because there's no heavy-handed sermon like handed down that thou shalt, right? No one's on the mountaintop, no one's saying thou shalt. In fact, so often Krishna says, I think. I mean, it's that open-minded. He says, it's my opinion. He literally uses this word. Yukta tame mataha. Mata is opinion. In my opinion, Arjun, I think, in my opinion, you should consider this. He even says in the end that, well, do whatever you want, do as you wish. Yatechasi tatha guru is the Sanskrit term in the 18th chapter. He says, I've shared with you, I've answered every question that you asked. I've given you more detail than ordinarily available, accessible. But that at the end of the day, you will do what you want to do, and so be it. Yatha ichha asi, as is your wish, tatha kuru, so you should do. In the middle of it, he says, with you or without you. Nimitta matra bhava savvesachan. Nimit is like just sort of some reason, some random reason. Like if you're there, we'll win this. This side will win, the right side, the righteous side. Dharma will win with you or without you. You happen to be on this side, therefore you should fight, because the world will then see an exemplar that those who stick it out on the side of the right ultimately prevail, because that side will prevail. He said, that's how it always will be. So it's a very conversational, very practical, very pragmatic, very peer level, and very modern also, very applicable, very relevant to today. It's not limited to just the battlefield. And many have said that, well, there is a constant battle going on within, even though this took place during the battle outside battle. There's practically never a day, never a time when there isn't a battle within us. And so this knowledge helps stabilize that situation, that war within. Literally, that's how the first chapter starts. At many levels, between many parties, you see in the first chapter, the way the context set is, there's a conflict. In other words, by war, I mean there's a conflict. There's a conflict of interests. There's a conflict of thoughts. There is a conflict of intentions. There is a conflict of words, vocabulary. There is a conflict of actions that you're seeing it differently right in the first chapter itself. Starting from the second chapter, you start to see the disentanglement of that. You see the resolution of all of that. It's a giant hairball. In the first chapter, when we arrive there, it's a giant hairball that I don't know where to begin and where to end, what to do. What is all this? How do I get rid of this mess? And you felt like that. I have felt like that about life. Sometimes we've been brought to that stage. And we were clueless and we literally don't know where to begin and what to do. And we're just so frustrated, so desperate, so lost, so pissed. We're absolutely mad. Or ready to give up, ready to throw up. And sometimes ready to end their own lives, sadly. All that you see in Arjun in the first chapter. And mind you, he was the mightiest of the warrior princes, and then there are about 1.8 million altogether soldiers gathered there, added together, about 2/3. So these are great details given in the Mahabharat. About 2/3 was from the Kaurav side, the opposing side, opposite of Arjun. Arjun is our hero, right? He's fighting on the right side, the side of goodness, the side of truth, the side of love, the side of selflessness, the side of giving, not grabbing, not hoarding. So their side is weak. They have about 1/3 of that 1.8. And the other side, the takers and the oppressors and the grabbers and the hoarders, they have about 1.2 out of the 1.8 or so million soldiers, if you will. So clearly outnumbered. It's 2-for-1, roughly. And not only the numbers, strength in numbers, yes, but even the luminaries. So the phenomenal warriors, the biggest of the big, the heavy hitters, as we say. They were all on the side of, or most of those were on the side of the wrong, the untruth. And it's interesting if you were to look at today, like what we might see as well. Or if you were to see within, majority of the times where our mind goes. Twice, perhaps two out of 3 times goes where we don't want it to go. It should not go. We end up seeing what we didn't care to, we didn't want to. We end up seeing, hearing, eating something that we regret. That this isn't what I wanted to eat. This isn't how I was planning on spending my time. I wanted to exercise instead. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to meditate. And I find so many excuses to not meditate. And life then is filled with twice regrets, right? Then rejoice. 1 in 3 moments might be rejoice, saying, and 2 and 3 could be regretful. And then we get a little bit of rejoice and more of the regret, and we keep pushing forward. So many different ways of looking at it, the war without or the war within. And how do we win essentially is Arjun, the mightiest from fighting from the side of truth, and arguably perhaps the only one really who had any shot at it, any chance of winning the war for this side, is at the last moment. 8 o'clock, the war is going to start. This is 7:45 a.m. Everybody has gathered on the battlefield in their own choicest elephants and horses and chariots and their magic tricks and the weapons and all of that. And this guy says, we're in the first chapter, hey, says to his driver, his charioteer, Krishna, the Lord, would you mind, essentially starts with an order from a devotee to the Lord, starts with an order given from a disciple to the guru, to the master. And his life starts topsy-turvy, right? Like it starts the other way around, it starts opposite. We stumble and then we get up, or we screw up and then we learn from mistakes. We do something really bad, say something bad, and then we start to improve. So long as we go to the right place for that improvement, so long as we resolve, so long as we tune into good advice, so long as we want to improve, there is a chance for it. And so Arjun says, hey, would you mind take the chariot to the middle of it? So this is all in the first chapter now. Everything that I'm sharing actually shows up in the first chapter. Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapayame Achyuta is the Sanskrit verse that I'm describing. Senayo, Sena is army, right? Senayo is plural, but Madhya is middle. So two armies, take it to the middle. What? Rath is chariot. Sthapaya, and stay there. Don't just drive past the midpoint. Take me to the midpoint of the two armies, so that the line dividing the two, and then stay there. May my chariot, Achyuta is saying, it's one of the names. Like I said, there are different names of Krishna and Arjun in it. And so on occasion we'll visit, what does it mean? Why is he randomly calling him by this name or that name? So Achyut has a very deep, loaded meaning. When you're interested, we can decode that. There is some complexities in the Gita, but there is a way to decode the complex and elevate, lift up the principles in it. Also in the names of the Lord and Arjun. So Senayor Ubhayor Madhye Ratham Sthapayame Achyuta. I want to see, later on he says, I want to see who all have gathered or is in battle, willing to fight, one to give their life, sacrifice their lives. Who am I going to have to encounter? Who am I going to have to fight, shoo away from this battlefield, so that truth will prevail once again, goodness will prevail once again, love, caring, nurture, selflessness will prevail once again. The power of love will prevail over the love of power once again. With his opponent, with Duryodhan, with the Kauravas, with the evil ones, it was all about the love of power. And they were power hungry, and by machinations they had grabbed onto the power and just kept it and kept avoiding giving back to the rightful heir. Right? In the Mahabharat, that's what this is about. Arjun's older brother, Yudhishthira, was the rightful heir of Hastinapur. And they kept on tricking them, playing games with them, and depriving them of regaining the throne that belonged to them. Because they wanted power. And to corrupt to begin with, power corrupted them more, as the adage goes, right? He wanted absolute power, because in his mind was absolute corruption. And someone had to stop him. The system had to take care of it. The system to which we all belong, the cosmic system, made of the cosmic laws, at some point had to take care of it, fix it. And that's what brought everyone to the brink of the war. You can draw parallels within also. Sometimes there's family feuds. Sometimes something happens at work. Sometimes friends, so-called friends, turn out to be really not so. And the other way around as well. So these are all confusing moments, and things are not clear, and we don't know what to do and what to make of it. And in all of those instances, as was in this place on the battlefield, the Gita comes in handy, perfectly there to guide us through the situation. So that's the context of the Gita. A couple of other shlokas that come. So Duryodhan is like sort of beating his chest. Duryodhan is the opponent of Arjun, right? He's the evil prince. Arjun's big brother was also fighting with Arjun, 5 brothers. He's a good prince. So the evil prince, Duryodhan, is beating his chest saying, look what I've got. What chance do they have? Anyecha bhavo shuraha madarte tyakta jivitaha nana shastra praharanaha sarve yuddha visharadaha. This is a verse that I just picked to put in front of you from the first chapter, because we'll hop, scot, and jump across the first chapter to get to that side. He's saying, on the other hand, Duryodhana is saying, look to his people. What is this? Like, what chance do they have? They got Bhim, like he's like a bodybuilder who's there. And what else? Who else is literally Duryodhana saying they've got one guy, one strong man from Bhim from their side. He doesn't even care about Arjun. He knows Arjun's prowess, but he always marginalizes, always belittles, just doesn't care. And therefore he is kind of preemptively declaring victory as if before the war began. We saw that in November of 2020, before election, victory was declared, right? Before the election was over. Yeah, well, of course, we're going to win. What else? Who else? We see that a lot elsewhere also. Sometimes it happens in life, sometimes in families, sometimes at workplace, sometimes at other places. The overconfidence. So he's saying, Anye cha bahavo shura. Anye, so many others. Before that verse, he's named a bunch of warriors, Duryodhana, in the Gita, that I'm skipping a bunch of shlokas. But he's named until then a bunch of mighty warriors from his side, and then a bunch of warriors on the other side, on Arjun's side. He said, yeah, they've got Bhim, and they've got his son, Abhimanyu. They say he's okay. He's an okay kid. He kind of knows sort of how to fight. And a few others he names. He completely walks right past Krishna, doesn't even acknowledge him as worth mentioning even. Possibly also because Krishna had made the promise, so taken a vow that I will participate in this battle, but I will not fight, because this is not my battle. Our life's battle is our battle, friends. God will guide us. God helps those who help themselves. He will guide us. He does guide us. He unbeknownst to us, know it or not, like it or not, believe it or not, accept it or not, doesn't matter. Truth doesn't change. We are being guided. There is guidance in our lives. Well, he's not going to fight our fights. He never does. He never will. And he says that emphatically a few times in the Gita also. Later on, in the 3rd chapter or 4th chapter, he says, I don't mess with what all this is. I'll guide. I'll show you the way. You're going to have to do the walking. You will have to drive. So this is tough love, but it is like the most useful form of love. Right? So when Arjun and Duryodhana went to ask for help to different kings, this is the entire kingdom of Bharat, meaning India. Every state in India at the time participated in that war, had to take sides. Are you going to fight from Duryodhana's side or Arjun's side? Every king signed up, essentially, that I'm on this side, I'm on that side. That's how, in the end, it ended up being 2/3 were fighting out of fear. Majority of them fighting out of fear, suppressed, submissively from Duryodhana's side, because he had grown very mighty. And all these mighty warriors were from his side, that he names them. And therefore, some of them said, we don't want to. Some of them secretly sent messages to Arjun's side. We don't want to, but I don't have a choice. And therefore, I'm sorry, you'll see me on the opposing side. I'm fighting from that side. And so they had also gone to Krishna, because he was the prince of Dwarka, which is on the western sort of shore of India, still there today in Gujarat, right? There was an island then. I think it's an island now also. But there is a symbolic place on the western coast in Gujarat also. So which side are you going to fight from? Krishna said, I'm a lover, not a fighter. He said it before Michael Jackson. Krishna said, I don't fight. I'm not going to fight. I'll show you the way of love. But still, they both wanted to. And so Krishna said, I have 2 things that I can give. One is my mighty army, invincible sort of kind of army. The only one who could defeat his army was himself. I mean, this is my interpretation of it. But he says, so one of you can have my army, the other can have me. He says to Duryodhana and Arjun, who both approached him. And Arjun says, and there's a lovely story associated with that, how this all unfolds and manifests. I'll skip the story. A lot of you probably know how it plays out beautifully, dramatically. But and there's a big lesson in it also, but I'll skip the story. And Arjun says, no, I want you, Krishna. And Duryodhana is so giddy. He's a stupid idiot, he said, literally. He goes back and says, like, he's so dumb. Arjun says to his, Duryodhana says about Arjun to his own people. He had a chance. Krishna asked him before me that, do you want my army or do you want me? And that dummy asked for him. He said, no, if I'm forced to pick, then I'll pick you, Krishna, not your army. And therefore, guys, Krishna gave me his army. All his army is going to fight from our side. And so Krishna was from this, and Krishna had said at the time to both of them that I will not fight, I will not raise a weapon. I will not lift a weapon. I'm not going to fight in that war. I'll show up in whichever way you want. So Arjun says, well, you're an expert driver. The way you navigate, the way you maneuver, the way you sort of eloped with Rukmini, his first wife. It's famed and fabled how you trekked and how you found your way out. Can you be my driver? Would you mind? I'll need a very expert charioteer. If it's all on my shoulders to fight this battle, I need a charioteer who will always protect me. Will figure out ways to escape, even when surrounded by armies. And Krishna says, okay, yeah, I don't have to take up a weapon for it, so I'll be your charioteer. And there's a lot of significance in it, right? When we put the Lord, when we put the force in front of us, when we follow it, when we let it take the lead, it, whatever you want to call, God, him, her, Devi, Surya, Shiva, Krishna, Ram, Jesus, Allah, whatever your it is, when we have some trust, your own Atma, your Guru, whatever the it is, and when we're willing to follow its lead, charioteer is in front of the one sitting in the chariot. The charioteer is then protecting also. If anyone was throwing any arrows at Arjun in the front, they first had to encounter the charioteer. Right? He has the basics of faith in Krishna, and he says, yeah, great, but I've got my driver, I've got my vehicle, I got my driver. This is Indy 500, and I have to win this. He's got his pit crew also there, his four brothers, Yudhishthir, Bhim, Nakul, and Sahadev. And so the war is about to begin in about 15 minutes, and he says, so Duryodhana was saying, look, I've got Bhishma on my side, I've got Drona on my side, I've got Kripacharya on my side, I've got Karan on my side. This Karan can blow Arjuna out of water any day, any moment. Bhim, this mace that I carry, Duryodhana says, I can crush Bhim with my mace. So Karan is going to take care of Arjun, I'm going to take care of Bhim. Nakul and they were like pretty boys. Yeah, they're more interested in makeup, he says. Those are pretty boys. My mama, my old uncle will take care of them. Shakuni will take care of them. Yudhishthir is captured. Just think of it as like, what's he going to do? He just sits on the throne and rule. So he's ready to declare victory. He had declared victory, and right, to some extent, rightly so.